Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Lifestyle Influence by Financial Empowerment Conference and FinFET. We're here to talk about how greener lifestyles can inspire a greener well-being. As someone who designs, monitors, and evaluates environmental projects, I understand the tremendous gains of living a sustainable lifestyle. We just have half an hour together, but my goal is that we delve into discussion on a key component of wellness, that is financial wellness and its relationship to green living. Each of our panelists have a blend of expertise and bring a unique perspective. First on our panel, we have Colin John Jenkins, a practicing architect, project manager, sustainability and wellness consultant, and university lecturer. He has served both professionally and socially in many administrative and management capacities, such as the chairman of both the Antigua and Barbuda Architect Registration Board and the Environmental Management Committee in the Bureau of Standards. And then we have panelist Daryl Jackson, who is the founder and managing director of Aware Energy Solutions, an Antigua and Barbuda-based company specializing in the design, installation, and evaluation of renewable energy and energy efficiency solutions. He presently serves as telecommunications consultant in the Ministry of Information, Broadcasting, Telecommunications, and Information Technology, where he advises the minister on ICT policy and regulation. Thank you all for being here today. I hope I was able to capture the essence of what you both do in your day-to-day lives. I first wanted to have each panelist do a brief introduction, and we'll first turn to Colin.
Hi, good afternoon as well, and good afternoon to your audience. I hope it's afternoon for the persons that are viewing as well. My name is Colin John Jenkins. I use John not to get a mistaken identity with other persons. As you mentioned, I've wear quite a bit of hats in terms of the building development environment. And I'm passionate about sustainable development in all aspects. So I'm just here to share my knowledge with the audience and yourself.
Thanks so much, Colin or John. Next, we have Daryl Jackson.
Thanks again for the introduction, Ezra. This is a topic which is really dear to me and something I'm really passionate about. Not just because it's the field that I'm in and the business that I'm in, but I think it's really important for this generation and future generations. For far too long, we've taken a number of benefits from the environment without counting the cost. But there is no free lunch. There is always a cost to be paid. And the cost of addressing some of the environmental damage that we do can be very expensive and span a number of generations. So I'm really delighted to be given an opportunity to speak on the topic and how living green, living sustainably can not just have long-term benefits, but also contribute to person's financial gain for the introduction. And thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for that. When you think of sustainability, that can touch on every aspect of one's life. Living sustainably has a lot to do with making conscious choices. It could be in what we buy, how we spend our money, whether we cut down on our usage of energy, water, or fossil fuels. So in the long term, these decisions can lead to a reduction in environmental damage, as well as prevent the depletion of critical natural resources. So Colin, based on your background, can you tell us your understanding of sustainability, given that you are a sustainability and wellness consultant, and how do you see it having a relationship with financial wellness?
Okay, great. That's an interesting question. The narrative in relation to sustainability at this time focuses on three pillars. Most are probably heard of it before, and that is balancing the economy, the society, and the environment in tandem with each other. So it's almost like a triple constraint relationship. One does not outweigh the other. So if you have a situation where there is too much focus on the environment, but the people themselves do not derive any benefit, you cannot consider that to be sustainable. And likewise with the economy. So the whole idea behind of the theory in relation to sustainability is balancing in a triple constraint, people, planet, and profit. Now, when you think about sustainability, persons often may miss how important it is and how it ties into the whole concept of wellness. A major part of sustainability has to do with how the society is able to function. And if you don't have a healthy society, you're going to have an issue. So there's a major component of health and wellness within that conversation of sustainability. And that shows itself with the pandemic and how debilitating that was for many countries. And because we are on the cusp of suffering a lot from climate change and the temperature rises, the resilience conversation comes into play. And then the equitable and access-free conversation comes into play. So you look at all of these things as a whole, and they are the metrics in which you use. Now, you may ask yourself, like you asked, what does all this have to do with financial conference, financial advice, financial recommendations? It's everything. Think about it this way. All of us are some sort of resource to someone else and even ourselves, especially if you're in an investment climate. If you're the government, if you're a private employer, and you employ people, okay? You're in a situation where you are employing or procuring a resource, a human resource, and that human resource is going to take your vision, your objectives and your goals and create something as an output, as a product, a good or service that then returns a bottom line investment to you. So when you think about sustainability, when you think about health and wellness, and you think about the environment these people are operating in, the environment external to the structures that these people have to deal with, how the society is structured, how health and well the persons who are working are, and you don't have these sort of checklists or points to consider, and then measure that against productivity, you can be losing out and maximizing your benefits as an entrepreneur, as an employer, as a government. It doesn't matter. So it's very much tied to financial well-being and benefit.
Thank you for that. Depending on if you are a policymaker, someone from a household or a member of a community group, one of these elements at some point will stand out more. So how do you ensure that there is a balance among those pillars that you mentioned?
It's through education, it's through the programs and initiatives that you're doing here now, is through our consultancy, like myself and my colleague Daryl. Whenever we engage clients and when we engage the public, we inform as to how these dimensions tie in, because it's an education process, it's an awareness, it's a movement. Of everyone won't understand it at the same time. You have center stage taking place for certain terms, like you mentioned, buzzwords like resilience, sustainability, and so on, but it's much more. And so it takes education, it takes programs like this to put the information out there, give us a platform to do just that and educate. And eventually it's going to come on, but it takes constant dedication and a regurgitation of the valuable information we are sharing today.
Now, one of the things that we do see over the years, there has been an education drive on the use of green spaces. One of the things that have been pushed in the media and also by decision makers is that this, green spaces contribute to our physical well-being and greater productivity. Now, in what spaces in particular are you most productive? Or do you believe that people can be most productive, and how can that influence how much output they put out?
when you mentioned spaces, you meant office or home or in particular? Because what we can, go ahead.
For instance, individuals may take to green spaces such as parks as in terms of alleviating their stress. Some individuals may look at over the years in terms of greening their individual spaces as to contribute to their overall betterment.
Okay. Well, I think it's a matter of where you are, because it goes back to the whole conversation of sustainability again. If it's not financially viable for you to be operating in an office, then you are doing yourself an injustice. So it's where you are that's financially viable, that can be as focus centered as possible, because you mentioned park, and when you're in the park, you have a lot of distractions. So you may not get the output you're looking for. So it's where you are that makes financial sense, that makes sense in terms of your family responsibility, that makes sense of your routine, because we are individual beings and how we function slightly differs from person to person. So it's the immediate space where you think you can get the most productivity from, and then looking at that space and considering what are some of the things that you need to do in that space so that you have a greater output, which means a greater yield, which means a greater financial capacity.
Now, I know, Daryl, you may look at this very differently. Your work focuses a lot on greening spaces, if it's on a commercial level, residential level. You do tend to do that in your everyday. So what is your take on this particular topic?
We generally, yeah, in proposing solutions to the various customers that we interact with, whether it be business or residential, we generally, although we are involved in selling renewable energy solutions or renewable energy technology-based solutions, all of those tend to be derived from what problem the customer is trying to solve. And that varies. Some customers simply want to know that they are engaged in practices and choices that benefit the environment. Some customers really are more concerned about the bottom line, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Some customers are simply going along with their neighbors, their friends that are adopting these practices. And so we tend to tailor what we do and the solutions that we provide based on specific needs. And that is important, because unless people are given an opportunity to make choices that are consistent with their personal goals and their values, if they're not doing that, then it's unlikely to contribute to their financial well-being and their overall well-being. So that is how we look at green technologies in the context of households and businesses.
Now, for many, adopting renewable energy technologies or energy efficiency solutions may be seen as quite expensive and costly. And even to live a sustainable lifestyle may be seen as something that requires a lot of sacrifice. Now, based on both of your experiences, could you provide some insight as to how this could be manageable for a common person? Colin?
Now you can go first. Oh, okay. All right. So they say the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. I come from the standpoint of two angles. One, it's if you are getting into this as an investment and you have not quite finished establishing all of the structures like your home or office, whatever, or if it's something you're planning to do. From that standpoint, I always advise persons to allow for provisions for upgrade with renewable energy. You could speak to your team about having that compensation allowed for. As well, not to not to rain on Daryl, but I mean, if we can have a situation where the spaces work so well, we don't need, or we need very little amount of renewable energy, that is where we start. So for instance, if you can design a home that allows for cross ventilation to take place, allow for cooling to take place, allow for heat exchange to be controlled properly and heat gain to be considered quite a lot, and you come out having a space that utilizes very little energy because you don't need air conditioning, then you're starting from a great standpoint. So anything else that you add to your system to subsidize power consumption, whether it's for emergency function uses or in the event of rain and you have to close fenestration spaces, etc., then the amount that you have to invest for that service is not as much as if you didn't take any of these considerations at all in effect. So my point here is early investment in terms of understanding what it takes, or at least working with persons with the right stakeholders so that you have that conversation early in the process can go a very long way. Now, if you have an established structure, then you can look at some of the upgrades internally over time, changing out some of the windows so you maximize the amount of air that comes through the spaces. Sometimes as simple as looking at your colors of your home, whether it's the roof, the exterior of the building, what materials it's made from, and so on, are things that you consider. And then, of course, my colleague here, Daryl, can tell you about the nuts and bolts with the actual electronics and those mechanisms.
Daryl, how would you advise individuals who may want to access renewable energy technologies and energy efficiency solutions, but they may find it difficult to do so?
Would have said, sorry, as Colin would have said, it's to start where you are and understand why you're doing what you're doing. The notion that renewable energy technologies and energy efficiency generally is expensive and beyond the reach of the average person, that is far from being true. I mean, over the last 10 years or so since I've been in this business, the cost of the technologies have come down as much as 80%, but that message hasn't really gone out there. I mean, if you're trying to reduce a large energy bill, it will cost more than if you're trying to reduce a small energy bill. And so the ambition is closely aligned with the cost. So it's basically starting from where you are. I mean, everyone, irrespective of your level of income, make important investment decisions at various stages, whether it's in building or buying a home, buying new appliances, all those decisions are big investment decisions. And it's thinking about sustainability, it's thinking about your energy costs and the environment generally when making those big important decisions. And it's also in those little, those small things. We haven't really touched on the importance of recycling and reusing. A lot of the things we use in our daily lives, but those are also great contributors to how we interact with the environment and how we can protect the environment and protect ourselves. So that's what I think, is that you start from where you are.
Thank you. Colin, do you agree that small steps would go a long way? I believe you're muted.
Sorry about that. No, I said, yes, I do. I think the small steps can start and go somewhere really meaningful. But persons may hear the small steps and wonder, okay, so what does that entail? Exactly, So again, it's going back to the stakeholders to evaluate where you are, like Daryl said, what it is that you want to accomplish, and then how you can create sort of like a project execution plan, so that you know in the first stage that you are looking at, let's say, investing in the inverters, and then the second stage you're looking at the solar array system and making sure that conforms to how your yard space or your landscaping is going to be, if you're not going to use those on the ceilings or on the roofs of the building, etc. And then you have it in a situation where you can add the number of renewable energy systems to your desired output over time. So that's really what Daryl was mentioning, which I agree with. But it's a matter of evaluating where you are, because there may need to be some physical changes to spaces to accommodate.
Now, even on I guess a practical level, a single female-headed household, a woman of a single female-headed household may have to make critical decisions between paying, for instance, for a school fee, as opposed to acquiring renewable energy. So clearly, there are barriers there. We have done or have seen studies where women in Antigua are paying more in terms of their income towards energy costs. How would you advise a mother in that, who finds herself in that position but wants to adopt more green practices in her everyday life?
That's a good. Go ahead, Daryl. You could go ahead, Daryl.
I think regardless of income level or gender, there are many opportunities for adopting a green lifestyle or more environmentally sustainable lifestyle. Of course, households with very limited energy demand, the objective would never be to reduce the amount of energy that is used, because that generally would be tied to the level of income. So for someone with a small income, asking them to reduce their energy demand, who is already energy poor, is only going to make them energy poor, because you want people to have a fairly good quality of life, and to be able to, over time, increase their income, increase their quality of life. So you're not looking at necessarily reducing their energy demand if you're from a very low income household. But what you're actually looking at is getting placing yourself in a position where you're able to do more with what you have. And also, as your income level increases and you're able to afford more new appliances, etc., that you're able to do it in a more efficient way, and do it in a way that does not degrade the environment. And although we have been talking quite a bit about renewable energy technologies and investing and buying, these technologies, there are many other ways that all households, low income, middle income, high income, can be more sustainable and be more green aware, green conscious. And I mentioned, recycling, reusing, being conscious about the way the modes of transport that we use. I think, I sometimes say that 100 years from now, our children and grandchildren are going to look back and think how absurd it is that, every time we go shopping, we take along 400 pounds of metal, 4,000 pounds of metal with us. And so it's making a disconnect between, for example, transportation, being for transportation's sake, and more transportation being as a means of access to services. Because as far as transportation goes, people actually want services, and transportation provides access to services rather than transportation being something of itself. So it's changing that sort of mindset, and realize that for transportation, once you have access, it could be through communication technology, it could be use of public transportation, it could be walking, it could be cycling. There are other modes of transportation that does not include extensive energy use, and in some cases extensive costs, which can be a burden on these same small, low-income households.
So what you're saying is you can adopt a green lifestyle without compromising on the quality of your life. But I would say
Absolutely.
there is still some measure of sacrifice that you have to make. So Colin, what are
Yeah,
the type
I
of
want to.
sacrifices? What are the type of sacrifices?
I'm not sure about sacrifice per se.
Okay.
I'm gonna be in Daryl's corner on this one. But I want to broaden the discussion a bit more, looking at our cultural norms. So for
Mm,
argument's sake, even though you have a single mother with a child, chances are somewhere along that discussion, you're going to have water, heating to talk about. So we are not at renewable energy yet. We're at renewable options. So you may have a solar panel water heater system in opposed to, let's say, propane and an electrical system. So we don't have enough time, but just to frame the context for you. So you have a certain amount of time before, when you turn on the water and it gets to the temperature that you need, there is water that's flowing. A simple thing of having a clean bucket in the shower that captures the water until you get to the water temperature that you need. And that bucket is used for irrigation in terms of gardening, whether it's used in sanitary purposes, back in the bathroom. So then when you use that back, you're not consuming the water that you would normally if that wasn't in place. And if you're not consuming that amount of water, then that means that you're paying a slightly less water bill. Sometimes this water can be used for washing in the household, whether it's clothing or dishes. So what I'm really saying here, from doing something as simple as capturing water in a bucket until you get to the temperature that you need to bathe yourself or your child, that water over time adds up. And that, I think, is a fundamental thing that we miss. How much these small measures in habits make a major financial difference for us over a period of 5 to 10 years. If you save up the amount of water that you consume or waste by having a water flow over a period of time, you'll be shocked. So when you look at that, then you juxtapose that against whenever you do upgrade the washing machine, whenever you do upgrade the television, you use energy efficient appliances or electronics versus looking at, instead of LED light, actually paying attention to which LED light, what's the one that gives you the longest lifespan for your buck. And then you start to talk about, for instance, again, going back to the windows. If you're cool, you're not going to turn on the fan. So these little nuances that when you add them up and look at sustainable living, it's a major financial benefit in the long run. So again, going back to my point, by the time you actually get to invest in now in a renewable energy system that can subsidize all of this thing that you're doing, the pricing for that system compared to you not paying attention to any of these things is going to be different. And it's going to be something that you can pay attention to. So I definitely think, even for a single mother, if you have the right education about changing your lifestyle habits, it goes a long way.
I agree, and that could put her on a pathway to adopting better green approaches. Okay. We are almost out of time. So at this point, I'm going to ask you to share some major takeaways, two major takeaways with us, and also share what's your money mantra. Let's start with Daryl.
The main thing I would like to take away, and I think I made this in my opening statement, is that, you know, this earth has been around for a long time. It was here long before us, and it will be here long after we're gone. This planet does not need us to protect it. It is more than capable of protecting itself with or without us. What we are really doing is protecting our home and the home of our children and future generations. So when we talk about living sustainably and protecting the environment, it's not for the earth, we're doing it for ourselves. So that's the first takeaway. The second takeaway is that renewable energies, energy efficiency is not beyond the reach of the average person. It doesn't require, this doesn't always require donor funding from foreign governments, from aid agencies, for the average citizen, the average householder to take advantage of these technologies. It's starting from where you are, and there are many creative ways, I think, that can be found that can bring it within the reach of the average person. And it's basically going out and educating yourself and learning as much as you possibly can so that you're able to make the right decisions. So those are my takeaways.
And what's your money mantra in 6 words?
At the end of the day, money talks. Money talks, and sometimes in order to get people to make the right decisions, to behave in the right way, there needs to be some sort of financial benefit, financial incentive. So that's the first one. So money talks. And the second one is money makes the world go round. That's the second one. So thank you.
Colin,
Right,
could you share with us your 2 major takeaways and your money mantra?
I think I'll start with my money mantra first, especially in light of where we are as a society, as a planet right now. Health is wealth. And everything that has to do with health and wellness, mental health, and your proper state of being, your physical environment, that is how you maximize on your profitability. And don't let the word profitability seem something daunting to you. If you can save $5 instead of $2 because of a change of a lifestyle habit based on this discussion we had here, you are traveling in the right direction. Rome was not built in a day. So if you ask me for my 2 major takeaways for a person to consider, it's a personal mantra of mine, which I share as a company, CJC Associates Inc. It's a motto actually, and it says, dare to be different, strive to be better. The second is, there's a wealth of information out there. If I had access to YouTube when I was going to school, I'll probably have my PhD by now. So if you don't understand something, always try to educate yourself on it a bit more. It doesn't have to be scientific research. There are persons who have great voices, and you have the ability to think about what they're saying and process that. So don't keep yourself in a bubble, make yourself available to the information that's out there, and always strive to learn something new each day. You'll be benefiting yourself and the future generations for it.
Thank you both. I would say that my money mantra is don't bury money or talent. And I think both of you have demonstrated today a wealth of talents and how you've used your expertise to grow your skills, grow your business, and to become more financially healthy. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. And at this point, we are out.
Pleasure's all mine.
Thank you.
And have a great time.